So I was I wish here to acknowledge the continuing support of the Antiquities Coalition, based in Washington, D.C., funded by Deborah Lair, and which is under the leadership of Tess Davis. In the post-COVID environment, we have decided to consider museums as cultural intermediaries between civilizations. The economic dimensions associated with museums are well known. The ecosystem made of art galleries, art fairs, cultural foundations, auction companies, and art museums generate economic value and jobs. In 2022, the global art market was estimated at around $68 billion. The documentary, The Art of Making It, reminds us that the relationship between art and finance is not always harmonious. The Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, inaugurated in 1997, remains the symbol of the transformation through culture of an entire city. In a sense, and in an American context, the genius of Jean-Michel Basquiat was to metamorphose the streets themselves into galleries. True art is always an elevation. From the perspective of urban revival, the ambition of Hong Kong of becoming Asia's art metropolis is another story to follow. At the moment, the West Kowloon Cultural District is one of the world's largest cultural infrastructure projects. However, whether in the field of arts, humanities, sciences, or technologies, museums create also communities. It is obvious at the local or national level. A nation is being built through education, various narratives, but also through its national museums. Louvre Museum was opened to the public during the French Revolution as Central Museum of the Arts of the Republic. This was clearly a political project. Beyond, at the global level, museums can be seen as unifying factors in a world which is too often divided. Cultural tourism brings better understanding between cultures. The internationalization of museums facilitates dialogue between civilizations. By some estimates, there are today in the world around 104,000 museums. This is a highly significant development. The International Council of Museums was established in 1946, and by 1970, the number of museums was around 20,000. European scholar Christophe Pommian, whose trilogy Museum, A World History has just been completed, rightly associates the notions of museum and of world history. By trying to make sense of the act of collecting, one simply learns about human nature and mankind. There are certainly links between our capacity to collect objects, specimens, data, and our power to understand and therefore progress. Here I invite each of us to reflect on the significance of the Global Brain Museum, a digital archive for the history of brain research worldwide. Beyond the issues of art trafficking or restitutions, please allow me to point at another problem. Indeed, let us not forget that 61% of museums are in Western Europe and North America. More than 33,000 museums are in the US, with a museum industry estimated at more than $11 billion. Only 18% of museums are in Asia Pacific, and less than 1% in Africa, while the continent represents more than 17% of world population. The China-Europe-America Museums Cooperation Initiative is itself a community made of experts, practitioners, collectors, artists, designers, entrepreneurs, and educators. We are especially honored this year to cooperate with Nankai University in the beautiful city of Tianjin. Nankai has been a pioneer in the field of museology, and museum studies are essential to the development of museums. From the start, we have benefited from the support of the China International Communications Group in Beijing and DG2CI. We owe a lot also to the trust of high personalities like Irina Bokova, former Director General of the UNESCO, Louis Godard, former cultural advisor of 3 Italian presidents, or Joan McEntee, former Vice Secretary of the US Department of Commerce. This is another illustration of the power of partnerships. Positioned at the intersection of China, the West, and the world, we are confident that our community will grow. Our open circle will raise the awareness of the importance of museums, stimulate research on what is a global phenomenon, and it will incubate cooperation and concrete projects. Together, let us contribute to a more equal geographic development of museums. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, a fair access to art, to knowledge, and to beauty is essential to peace, shared prosperity, and global progress. Museums create more cohesive communities. They can also be paths to fraternity. Now, it is for me a great pleasure to give the floor to 5 outstanding personalities. And I will first give the floor to Mr. Gao Anming, the Vice President and Editor-in-Chief of China International Communications Group. And I can tell you that without their support, it would be impossible for us to be together. Let us welcome Mr. Gao Anming. And once again, I apologize for the technical problems that we have had. But this is life, and we are so happy to be together. Let us welcome Mr. Gao Anming.
各位嘉宾、各位朋友，大家好！很高兴出席此次对话会。我谨代表中国外文局和所属当代中国与世界研究院，向各位专家学者的积极参与表示热烈欢迎，向联合主办单位中欧美全球倡议以及南开大学、文物保护联盟委员会等合作伙伴表示诚挚感谢。今年3月，习近平主席提出全球文明倡议，倡导尊重世界文明多样性，弘扬全人类共同价值，重视文明传承和创新，加强国际人文交流合作，向全世界发出在包容互鉴中促进人类文明进步的真挚呼吁。博物馆保护和传承人类文明，连接着过去、现在和未来，是文明交流、文化交往的前沿阵地，也是践行全球文明倡议的关键平台。今天，来自中欧美各国的专家学者共聚一堂，讨论博物馆作为文明对话之桥的功能，正顺应了推动全球文明倡议落地落实的时代要求，也契合了博物馆培育包容性、促进文明交流互鉴、惠及人类共同福祉的题中之意。博物馆具有促进文明对话的初心。博物馆起源于人们交流与收藏的欲望。博物馆的英文表述 museum 与缪斯女神 Muse 有关。公元前290年，托勒密一世为缪斯女神建立了一座学习中心，叫做 Museum， 意为缪斯女神的神庙。 这是博物馆的雏形。这座神庙是哲学先贤们激辩的平台，充斥着知识与哲学的省思。可见，早期博物馆的交流意味是远远大于收藏意味的。19世纪下半叶，在外交官、出国游历者、西方传教士、留学生等群体影响下，西方意义的博物馆传入中国，成为中西方相互了解的重要媒介。由此看来，博物馆在中西方的诞生均是文明交流互鉴的产物。博物馆具有搭建文明对话桥梁的功能。博物馆可以跨越时间，打捞过去，在同一个展厅内聚集千年万年来的藏品，又将不同地域的藏品与文化整合，以某种线索串成一个故事，呈现文化间的联系与差异。博物馆像是只万花筒，将古今中外集萃于一身，人们穿梭其中，就能感知千年万年之前、千里万里之外的世界。正是由于博物馆具有时间和空间双重媒介属性，又有身为文化、教育与公共服务机构的专业性和跨文化审美价值，才使其更容易被不同文化背景的受众所接受，能够为推动不同文明交流对话、和谐共生发挥独特作用。博物馆具有促进民心相通的优势。今年国际博物馆日主题为“博物馆、可持续发展与美好生活”，特别关注博物馆在破除社交隔阂方面的作用。博物馆具备为公众创造真实社交环境，满足公众真实社交需求的条件，是具有独特优势的社交场所。在中国，参观博物馆及各类主题展已成为年轻一代社交新潮流。对于国际人文交流而言，博物馆的社交性意味着它能够有效发挥消除心理隔阂、密切情感交流的作用，是增进各国民众，特别是青年相互了解和友谊的理想场所。不久前，我局参与承办的第2届民主、全人类共同价值国际论坛，专门设置了参访故宫博物院环节，多国嘉宾边参观边交流，在深化友谊的同时，也凝聚了尊重文明多样性的共识。作为致力于推动中外文化交流互鉴的综合性国际传播机构，中国外文局高度重视同博物馆界开展国际传播协同协作，并积极参与中欧美博物馆合作倡议系列活动。未来，我们愿继续与各界一道，共同策划实施博物馆加国际传播计划，促进博物馆与国际传播的跨界融合，为落实全球文明倡议、促进文明交流互鉴赋予新动力。从加强博物馆国际传播和文化交流的角度，我分享3点思考。首先，以文物为媒介，增强博物馆文化阐释功能。博物馆有着基于藏品物的传播特性，通过展示祖先流传下来的见证物，在追溯旧日辉煌的过程中获得文化自信，为当代生活提供参考，又通过展示千里之外的别样文化，使我们感受到文明多样性的魅力。因此，让博物馆的丰富馆藏活起来，具有保护文明多样性、增进各国人民相互了解 和促进人类文明进步的重要意义。同时，也应认识到，让文物真正活起来，不能仅仅停留在文物的呈现形式层面，还要深入到价值层面，提高文物研究阐释和展示传播水平，弘扬其中蕴含的全人类共同价值，为人类提供正确的精神指引和强大的精神动力。其次，以技术为钥匙，打开博物馆文物焕新的大门。第38届联合国教科文组织大会通过的关于保护与促进博物馆和收藏及其多样性社会作用的建议书指出，信息通讯技术为博物馆保存、研究、创造和传播遗产及相关知识提供了机遇。近年来，各国博物馆文物知识数字化和传播智慧化速度持续加快，让更多民众获得了更直观、更丰富的文化体验，也使历史文化在更大范围内得到传播。例如，敦煌研究院最近上线了数字藏经度，并计划推出多语言版本，公众只要通过一部手机，就能身临其境触摸敦煌的厚重历史。未来，国际博物馆界要继续把握元宇宙等新技术带来的机遇，探索实现资源共享、场景共创、标准共建、责任共担，使博物馆更好传承文明，搭建桥梁，昭示未来。第三，以交流为桥梁，发挥博物馆文明互鉴作用。作为传承人类文明的重要殿堂和文明交流的会客厅，博物馆的存在证明，不同文明之间的平等交流是充满希望的。以文明互鉴超越文明冲突是能够实现的。中法两国不久前发表的联合声明专门指出，支持故宫博物院与凡尔赛宫、上海C.E.A. 美术馆与蓬皮杜艺术中心等在两国合作举办高水平活动，再次表明博物馆国际合作是巩固各国人民友谊和国与国关系社会基础的重要一环。在和平与发展的时代主题面临严峻挑战的历史时刻，希望中外博物馆界同仁和致力于博物馆国际传播的专家学者能够共同努力，在联展、巡展、借展、文博知识传播、科技成果运用等领域密切交流合作，进一步将博物馆打造为文明对话之桥，为人类文明进步和世界和平发展注入更多能量。期待与会嘉宾的精彩分享和专业见解，预祝本次对话会取得圆满成功。谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Mr. Gao Anming, for these very rich remarks, and thank you also for mentioning this very important global civilization initiative. I think other speakers will have the opportunity to mention it and to comment on it. Now, I was telling you, dear friends, we have the honor for the third dialogue to closely cooperate with Nankai University. It is very moving for me because the first time I came to Nankai was in 2006. And I think this is a fascinating place in a fascinating city. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce now to the president of Nankai University, a very important educator in today's world, today's Chinese society. Let us welcome President Chen Yulu.
我们有请陈雨露校长。
尊敬的各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们，大家下午好！很高兴参加中欧美博物馆合作倡议第3场对话。首先，请允许我代表南开大学对本次对话的召开表示热烈祝贺，对线上线下参会的各位嘉宾致以诚挚问候，对筹办本次对话的各方表示衷心感谢。南开大学创建于1919年，是中国人自立图强、兴办现代大学的光辉典范。2019年，习近平主席亲临学校视察，并高度评价100年南开的光荣传统与办学成就，令全体师生心潮澎湃、豪情满怀。作为国内学科门类最齐全的综合性研究型大学之一，南开大学的博物馆学历史悠久，底蕴深厚。学校于1959年设立博物馆专门化，于1979年恢复设置博物馆学专业，是国内最早创办此类专业的高校。40余年来，一代代南开文博人筚路蓝缕，为国家的人才培养做出积极贡献。与此同时，学校于2001年建成南开大学博物馆，为博物馆教学实践创造了良好平台。一直以来，习近平主席高度重视博物馆工作的开展，多次访问国内外知名博物馆。他指出，博物馆是保护和传承人类文明的重要殿堂，是连接过去、现在、未来的桥梁，在促进世界文明交流互鉴方面具有特殊作用。本次对话是对习近平主席殷切期待的积极回应，对于我们分享智慧、凝聚共识具有重要意义，也必将给予我们面向未来的启迪与借鉴。本次中欧美博物馆合作倡议对话聚焦博物馆作为文化媒介的作用，主题明确，意义重大。一直以来，各国博物馆通过联展、巡展、借展等方式开展有效合作，出入境文物展览已成为中外文化交流中最有影响、最受欢迎、最具特色、最有实效的活动之一。比如上世纪70年代的中华人民共和国出土文物展览，有效增进了世界对中国文明的认识。又如2007年，秦始皇陵兵马俑列镇大英博物馆搭建了中欧文明交流之桥。今天还是国际博物馆日，本年度的主题为博物馆可持续性与美好生活。该主题同联合国可持续发展目标中的良好健康与福祉密切相关，是一个符合后疫情时代社会期望的命题。过去几年，各国守望相助，共抗疫情，让我们真切领会到人类命运共同体的意义。可以说，博物馆作为人类智慧的结晶，是连通古今中外的桥梁。通过博物馆，我们得以增强对多元文明的认知，寻得身处共同体的归属感，增强对未来的信心。各美其美，美人之美，美美与共，天下大同。我相信本次对话的召开，将更为坚定我们推广文明对话的信念。同时，南开大学也将以更为开放、包容、兼收并蓄的心态，同世界文明互融、互鉴、互通，为人类命运共同体的构建做出南开贡献。最后，预祝本次对话取得圆满成功。 谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, President Chen Yulu, for these important remarks. Now we are in Tianjin, and we are going to go to Europe. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today the Minister of Culture and Sports of Greece. We know, we Europeans, what we owe to Greece, of course. And Madam Minister, you are not only a decision maker, a policy maker in the field of culture in your country and in Europe, but it is also important for me to mention that you are an extremely famous archaeologist. And we will have here in Nankai, and actually we have with us today some important Chinese archaeologists, and it is so good to see this dialogue between China and Europe and the United States of America in the field of archaeology. It gives me great pleasure, Madam Minister, to give you the floor, and thank you for your support. And I hope that in the future also we will benefit from your advice and from your support. The floor is to Madam Lina Mendoni.
Αγαπητοί διοργανωτές, διακεκριμένοι ομιλητές και προσκεκλημένοι από τους τομείς της πολιτιστικής διαχείρισης, της πολιτικής και της διπλωματίας, κυρίες και κύριοι. Αποτελεί για μένα εξαιρετική χαρά και τιμή να απευθύνομαι σήμερα προς όλους εσάς που βρίσκεστε στον εμβληματικό χώρο του Μουσείου των Ανακτόρων στο Πεκίνο, με την ευκαιρία της επίσημης έναρξης του τρίτου διαλόγου στο πλαίσιο της πρωτοβουλίας συνεργασίας των Μουσείων Κίνας, Ευρώπης, Αμερικής. Μια συνεργασίας με στρατηγικούς εταίρους, την Παγκόσμια Πρωτοβουλία Κίνας, Ευρώπης, Αμερικής, την Ακαδημία Σύγχρονων Σπουδών για την Κίνα και τον Κόσμο, το Συνασπισμό για τις Αρχαιότητες και το Μουσείο των Ανακτόρων. Ευχαριστώ θερμά τον ιδρυτή της Παγκόσμιας Πρωτοβουλίας Κίνας, Ευρώπης, Αμερικής, καθηγητή David Gosset, για την εξαιρετικά τιμητική πρόσκληση να συμμετέχω με την ιδιότητά μου ως Υπουργός Πολιτισμού και Αθλητισμού της Ελληνικής Δημοκρατίας. Μετά τη διερεύνηση του αντίκτυπου της τεχνολογικής εξέλιξης και του ψηφιακού μετασχηματισμού στα μουσεία το 2021 και τη συζήτηση σχετικά με το ρόλο του στην προστασία της πολιτιστικής κληρονομιάς το 2022, η τρίτη κατά σειρά συνάντηση, η οποία διοργανώνεται την ιδιαίτερα συμβολική μέρα του εορτασμού της Διεθνούς ημέρας Μουσείων, εστιάζει στη συνεισφορά των μουσείων ως πολιτιστικών διαμεσολαβητών στο διάλογο μεταξύ των πολιτισμών. Φέτος συμπληρώνονται αισίως 46 χρόνια από το 1977, έτος κατά το οποίο η 18η Μαΐου καθιερώθηκε από το Διεθνές Συμβούλιο Μουσείων ως ημέρα των μουσείων, προκειμένου να αναδειχθεί και να προβληθεί ο εξαιρετικά σημαντικός ρόλος τους στην υπηρεσία του κοινωνικού συνόλου. Ένας ρόλος ο οποίος δεν είναι μονοσήμαντος και στατικός, αλλά αντιθέτως πολύπλευρος και εξελισσόμενος. Μολονότι τα μουσεία είναι επιφορτισμένα με τη συλλογή, την τεκμηρίωση, τη διατήρηση, την ερμηνεία και την προβολή των υλικών και άειλων αγαθών της πολιτιστικής κληρονομιάς, ενεργώντας ως διαχειριστές και επιμελητές ενός σημαντικού και εξόχως εμβληματικού τμήματός της και κατ' επέκταση ως θεματοφύλακες της συλλογικής ιστορικής μνήμης, συνείδησης και ταυτότητας, οι μουσιακοί οργανισμοί δεν είναι στραμμένοι αποκλειστικά στο παρελθόν. Είναι ζωντανοί οργανισμοί που αναπτύσσονται και εξελίσσονται μαζί με την κοινωνία, στην οποία ανήκουν και την οποία υπηρετούν, διατηρούν μαζί της μια αμφίδρομη, δυναμική και οργανική σχέση. Μια κοινωνία που στην εποχή της παγκοσμιοποίησης βρίσκεται όλο και περισσότερο σε άμεση, διαρκή και πολυεπίπεδη επαφή, επικοινωνία, αλληλεπίδραση ή και αλληλεξάρτηση με τον εγγύς και τον ευρύτερο και παγκόσμιο περίγυρό της. Μια κοινωνία επίσης που έχει προπολού πάψει να είναι κλειστή, αμιγής και στεγανή, αλλά αντιθέτως αποκτά αυξανόμενη, φιλετική, θρησκευτική και πολιτισμική πολυμορφία και στο εσωτερικό της. Με όχημα τα υλικά και άειλα τεκμήρια της συνεχούς παρουσίας στο χώρο και το χρόνο που βιώνονται και εκφράζονται ως σύμβολα και μαρτύρια της ιστορίας και της παράδοσης των ηθικών αξιών και των αισθητικών αντιλήψεων και ιδεών της κοινωνίας, τα μουσεία βρίσκονται σε διαρκή αλληλεπίδραση με την εκπαίδευση, την κοινωνικοποίηση και την κοινωνική δραστηριοποίηση, μετέχοντας ταυτόχρονα σε πολιτισμικές διεργασίες και διεργασίες ενδυνάμωσης της κοινωνικής ενσωμάτωσης και αντοχής, αλλά και της εξέλιξης και της αλλαγής. Ως επίκεντρα πολιτιστικής, καλλιτεχνικής και εκπαιδευτικής δράσης, αλλά και ως συντελεστές της τοπικής και υπερτοπικής παραγωγής και οικονομικής δραστηριότητας, τα μουσεία συνιστούν κοιτίδες πολιτισμού, δημιουργικής έκφρασης και διαβίου μάθησης και ταυτόχρονα παράγοντες κοινωνικής μόχλευσης, ανάπτυξης και πρόοδου. Μπορούν να λειτουργήσουν έτσι ως ισχυρά δομικά υλικά για τη θεμελίωση του μέλλοντος, δίνοντας στα μέλη της κοινωνίας τη δυνατότητα να ξεδιπλώνουν τις δημιουργικές τους δυνάμεις, να αλληλεπιδρούν και να μετέχουν ενεργά και ισότιμα στη διαμόρφωση και εξέλιξη του ιστορικοκοινωνικού και πολιτιστικού τους περιβάλλοντος, να εμπνέονται και να διδάσκονται από αυτό, αλλά και ταυτόχρονα να το εμπλουτίζουν και να το προστατεύουν. Συνεπώς, μέσω της εκπαιδευτικής και επιμορφωτικής διαδικασίας, τα μουσεία δύνανται να συμβάλλουν καθοριστικά στην ενδυνάμωση της κοινωνικής συνοχής, στηρίζοντας την κοινωνική, θρησκευτική και πολιτισμική πολυμορφία και ανεκτικότητα, παρέχοντας ισότιμες ευκαιρίες συμμετοχής, ελεύθερης και γόνιμης έκφρασης. Αποτελούν κυψέλες καινοτομίας και δημιουργικότητας και συμβάλλουν με την αξιοποίηση της σύγχρονης ψηφιακής τεχνολογίας στη βελτίωση της προσβασιμότητας της πολιτιστικής κληρονομιάς, στη διεύρυνση των αναγκαίων μέσων κατανόησης και ερμηνείας της, αλλά και στην ευαισθητοποίηση του κοινού σχετικά με το ευρύτερο πολιτιστικό τοπίο στο οποίο εντάσσονται ως σημεία αναφοράς. Έτσι, τα μουσεία αναπτύσσουν άμεση και πολύπλευρη οργανική σχέση με την κοινωνία, καθίστανται στρατηγικοί εταίροι με υψηλή συνεισφορά στην προσπάθεια επίτευξης των στόχων της πράσινης και βιώσιμης ανάπτυξης. Ταυτόχρονα, μέσα από τη συνολική παιδευτική τους λειτουργία, τα μουσεία έχουν τη δύναμη να συμβάλλουν ουσιαστικά στην ανάδειξη της πολιτισμικής ταυτότητας, αλλά και της ποικιλομορφίας στο παγκόσμιο πολυπολιτισμικό στερέωμα, ενώ ταυτόχρονα ανοίγουν διάβλους επικοινωνίας και αμοιβαίας κατανόησης, προωθώντας την ανοχή στη διαφορετικότητα, τη συμμετοχή, την ενσωμάτωση, τη συνεργασία και την ειρήνη μεταξύ των κοινωνικών ομάδων, των λαών και των πολιτισμών, επί τη βάση οικουμενικών και πανανθρώπινων αξιών. Τα μουσεία, συνεπώς, είναι κάτι πολύ περισσότερο από το φυσικό τους κέλυφος και τις συλλογές τους. Διαθέτουν όλα τα εχέγγυα να αποτελέσουν καταλύτες στην προσπάθεια ενός οικουμενικού διαλόγου, κατανόησης και ειρηνικής συνύπαρξης και συνεργασίας, όπως αυτοί περιγράφονται στις διακηρύξεις και τα ψηφίσματα των διεθνών οργανισμών, μεταξύ των οποίων και το ΙΚΟΜ. Η εμβέλεια και η επίδρασή τους εμπροκειμένου συνδέεται άμεσα με το βαθμό της οργανικής τους ένταξης στην καθημερινή ζωή, την πολιτιστική και πνευματική, καθώς και στις κοινωνικές και οικονομικές δραστηριότητες και αλληλεπιδράσεις, στην ανταλλαγή απόψεων και ιδεών για μείζωνα ζητήματα που απασχολούν την κοινωνία, στη συμμετοχή σε κοινά οράματα και προσδοκίες για το παρόν και κυρίως το μέλλον, τόσο σε τοπικό όσο και σε διεθνές επίπεδο. Προς τούτο, τα μουσεία οφείλουν να είναι καθολικά ανοιχτά, προσβάσιμα και φιλόξενα, να εμπνέουν όσο και να εκπαιδεύουν το κοινό, να προκαλούν αισθήματα και ενσυναίσθηση, όσο και να δίδουν γνώσεις, να απευθύνονται στη ψυχή και στο μυαλό. Όλα αυτά τα στοιχεία έλαβε υπόψη του το Διεθνές Συμβούλιο Μουσείων, η έκτακτη Γενική Συνέλευση του οποίου ανακοίνωσε το καλοκαίρι του 2022, κατόπιν ευρείας διαβούλευσης των Εθνικών Επιτροπών, την έγκριση και υιοθέτηση ενός νέου, σύγχρονου, σφαιρικού και συμπεριληπτικού ορισμού της έννοιας του μουσείου, που απηχεί και ενσωματώνει τις παρούσες και μελλοντικές απαιτήσεις και προσδοκίες. Ο νέος ρόλος των μουσείων στο σύγχρονο κόσμο, οι προκλήσεις, οι δυνατότητες και οι προοπτικές τους τέθηκαν στο επίκεντρο της πληθώρας των διεθνών εκδηλώσεων με αφορμή τον εορτασμό της Διεθνούς ημέρας Μουσείων τα τελευταία έτη, όπως βεβαίως και των κύκλων του διαλόγου στο πλαίσιο της πρωτοβουλίας συνεργασίας των μουσείων Κίνας, Ευρώπης, Αμερικής. Θα ήθελα, κλείνοντας την παρέμβασή μου, να επισημάνω ότι στο πέρας μιας περίοδου, η οποία λόγω της πανδημίας του COVID-19 σημαδεύτηκε από πολλαπλές και πρωτόγνωρες προκλήσεις, ειδικά για τον τομέα του πολιτισμού, είναι ιδιαίτερα σημαντικό το γεγονός ότι τα μουσεία, παρά τις δυσκολίες, επέδειξαν αξιοσημείωτη ανθεκτικότητα και προσαρμοστικότητα, μετατρέποντας τη δύσκολη συγκυρία σε ευκαιρία για αναστοχασμό και ανανέωση, σε αφορμή για επανεκκίνηση και αφετηρία μιας νέας πορείας. Στο εξαιρετικά σύνθετο και απαιτητικό σύγχρονο περιβάλλον, το γεγονός αυτό μας γεμίζει με αισιοδοξία και προσδοκίες για το μέλλον. Σας ευχαριστώ. Καλή επιτυχία.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Once again, very important speech. Indeed, a very complex world in which clearly museums have a very important role to play. Now, we have had, for the first dialogue, the second dialogue, the support of the former Director General of the UNESCO from 2009 to 2017, Madame Irina Bokova, and we are really honored to have with us today Madame Irina Bokova for the third year, and what you have done as a leader of the UNESCO is so important. I would say for peace and for human progress. So it gives me great pleasure, dear Irina Bokova, to give you the floor. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me particular pleasure to participate once again in this important third dialogue of the China-Europe-America Global Initiative on Museums, this time focused on dialogue between civilizations. It has become already a well-established tradition that I congratulate, that every year when we celebrate the 18th of May, which is the International Day of Museums, we get together, focusing on different aspects of the role of museums and society. I think it is important because this auspicious initiative holds the key of many of the challenges today. Museums nowadays are not just repositories for objects, but they're centers of knowledge exchange and social connection. Through the soft power of cultural diplomacy, museums are spaces to foster an awareness of our shared history and to transmit common values. These ideas resonate deeply with my experience as Director General of UNESCO. Let me just remind that already in the 1960s, UNESCO launched the pioneering Imaginary Museum project to increase access of the world's citizens to art through the reproduction of the world's most famous paintings. UNESCO adopted then the first recommendation dedicated to museums to make them accessible to everyone, working closely with the International Council of Museums, ICOM, which was also created by UNESCO. But so much has changed since then. In recent years, China has been at the forefront of the global transformation of the museum landscape. If in 1949, China had only 25 museums, today there are more than 5,000, acting as platforms for urban development, for social inclusion, for the quality of urban spaces, for reaching out to the others through a dialogue among civilizations. In recent decades, UNESCO has been engaged not only with supporting ICOM, but investing in major intercultural projects where museums have taken a prominent role. The Slave Road Project, museums as places of memory and reconciliation, and last but not least among them, the Silk Road Project. It has sought to better understand the rich history and shared legacy of the historic Silk Roads and the ways in which cultures have mutually influenced each other. In light of the enduring legacy of the Silk Road in connecting civilizations throughout history, The UNESCO Silk Road program that started in 1988 today revives and extends these historic networks in a digital space, bringing people together in an ongoing dialogue and fostering a mutual understanding of the diverse and often interrelated cultures that have sprung up around these routes. Let me add that the Silk Road project has a very rich legacy of movable heritage displayed in museums along the lengths of these roads. I'm happy to say that since 2017, these museums are presented and promoted by an online platform connecting the historic cultural legacy of the Silk Roads from across the world, from Xi'an to Venice, all the way through Baghdad, Samarkand, Balkh, and others. Over millennia, the wondrous story of the Silk Road has been one of encounters between people, cultures, religions, and knowledge. These encounters have shaped civilizations over the ages, catalyzing inventions, fertilizing intellectual scholarship. They gave birth to literary and scientific treasures, to traditions and artistic practices that have been passed across generations. And all of this glorious story of human encounter can be found in the museums. There are places where people meet, where they come together to share ideas, to innovate, to learn more about their own history and culture, to learn more about other histories and culture. There are places where we come together as one single community, showcasing the wealth of our diversity. There are places to wander, to learn about the past and invent the future. I see museums as cutting-edge laboratories of our shared humanity, to protect our heritage, to catalyze new creativity, to help us find words and images, to capture the complexity of our world, and to understand the other. I firmly believe in the power of museums as forces to rejuvenate urban policies, to deepen social inclusion, to create jobs, to foster a sense of belonging, and to make the most of the cultural heritage for all, and to contribute to the mutual understanding in a complex world. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the spirit of UNESCO's recommendation concerning the protection and promotion of museums and collections, adopted in November 2015, to promote the role of museums to foster the ideals of tolerance and mutual understanding. The recommendation recognized that, and I quote, the preservation, study, and transmission of cultural and natural, tangible and intangible heritage in its movable and immovable conditions are of great importance for all societies, for intercultural dialogue among peoples, for social cohesion, and for sustainable development. All these ideas were very well captured in the congratulatory message of President Xi Jinping, addressed to the UNESCO's high-level forum on museums as a follow-up of the adoption of the recommendation held in Shenzhen from 10 to 12 November 2016, in which I had also the privilege to participate. President Xi said, "Museums are cultural palaces that preserve and carry forward human civilization. Museums are bridges that link our past to the present and future. Their contribution to promoting mutual learning of civilizations in the world is distinctive and remarkable." President Xi invited further the participants to build consensus on how to bring back to life the diverse collections of museums and how to increase the global audience's access to them so that they can be instrumental to preserving the cultural diversity, to increasing understanding among peoples of the world, and to the advancement of human civilization. I believe these words have not aged a day. At the heart of our cities, museums are much more than cultural spaces to display collections. There are places of constant dialogue within and among countries, and knowledge about the incredible cultural diversity of humanity. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very successful deliberations.
Thank you very much, Madame Irina Bokova, for your precious support and your powerful ideas. We had the privilege to listen to two very important Chinese personalities in this opening ceremony, and two very important European personalities, Madame Lina Mendoni and Madame Irina Bokova. And of course, we are the China, Europe, America Global Initiative, China, Europe, America Museums Cooperation Initiative. And it is very important, therefore, to go to the United States of America. And I am very happy to give the floor now to Madame Deborah Lehr, the chairman and founder of the Antiquities Coalition. The work that the Antiquities Coalition is doing in the field of the fight against art trafficking is of the highest significance. Thank you very much, Deborah Lehr and your colleagues, for what you are doing, and thank you very much for supporting us for the third year, and I hope we will continue the cooperation. It gives me great pleasure now to go to Washington, D.C. and to listen to Madame Deborah Lehr. Madame Deborah Lehr, the floor is yours.
Hello. It's a pleasure again to join this important international event and stand alongside such globally recognized leaders in business, culture, and government. My deep appreciation goes out to David Gossett for convening this important group together and ensuring that the focus remains on a very pressing cultural, financial, and national security issue, the illicit trade in antiquities. My name is Deborah Lehr. I'm chairman and founder of the Antiquities Coalition, an organization dedicated to fighting the illicit trade in ancient art and artifacts while promoting responsible cultural exchange. Given our mission, we're delighted that the China-Europe-American Museums Cooperation Initiative is focusing this year's program on how museums can foster dialogue between civilizations. Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has recognized that cultural, historic, and religious treasures have a special significance. For this reason, over millennia of conquests, countless marauding armies have targeted art and sacred relics as spoils of war, while the greatest rulers have safeguarded them for future generations. Even in our modern times, few tragedies have united the world in grief and resolve, like the Taliban's dynamiting of the Bamiyan Buddhas, or as we've watched as Notre Dame burned. This potential to bring people together across borders, faiths, and languages can make cultural heritage a noble means for the greater good. And in today's increasingly polarized world, it's needed more than ever. Museums have a unique ability, and I would say responsibility, to harness the power of cultural heritage. Responsible cultural exchange can foster mutual understanding, appreciation, and much needed in today's world, respect. This lawful and ethical collecting and trade in antiquities can do the same, so long as it does not harm local communities, disrupt the historical record, or fund crime, conflict, or violent extremism. Finally, repatriation can serve as a bridge between cultures and, moreover, an opportunity to right past wrongs. We've seen that here in the United States as we've been, over the past 3 to 4 years, repatriating numerous looted antiquities back to the Middle East. And this has served as an opportunity for the United States to show how it respects the culture of those ancient civilizations. Today, we mark International Museum Day. Every year on this date since 1977, the global community has come together to raise awareness that museums are an important means of cultural exchange, enrichment of cultures, and development of mutual understanding, cooperation, and peace among peoples. In recent years, ICOM has shared this message with nearly 100 million people around the world, a number that the China Europe American Global Initiative is proud to add to today. The China Europe American Initiative is in an unparalleled position to further this conversation. Taken together, these three regions include an overwhelming majority of the world's museums. It's crucial that we stand together, not only to promote our cultural institutions, but also to support their work to protect our shared cultural heritage. The Antiquities Coalition is grateful for the role that museums have played and continue to play in global efforts to combat the illicit trade in ancient art and artifacts. The museum's leadership, particularly through ICOM, has been instrumental in strengthening international law. We see just one example in the 1970 UNESCO Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of owning cultural property, still the foremost treaty on the trade in cultural products today. And we see many other examples in the expansion of museum ethical standards and the guidelines for the acquisition, collection, display, and repatriation of stolen art and looted antiquities. These have been critical in raising the bar for the entire art market. We must, however, likewise acknowledge that much work still remains to be done on this front. Museums are facing increased scrutiny from various sources, such as law enforcement, journalists, activists, and sometimes even comedians like our talk show hosts here in the United States, Trevor Noah and John Oliver, who have produced very meaningful and insightful pieces on the illicit trade in antiquities. In recent years, police probes spanning numerous countries have seized dozens of suspect antiquities, alleging they were products of looting, trafficking, and even fraud. Even worse, some museum officials have been implicated in these investigations for negligent behavior at best and what may be criminal behavior at worst. These bad examples are by far the exception, but unfortunately, so long as they continue to make headlines, they will continue to harm the museum community and, more importantly, the essential work that museums are doing to foster international dialogue and safeguard cultural heritage. It's critical that museums take steps to regain public trust. Thankfully, there's much that can be done. Here are just 5 recommendations drawn from best practices from some of our organizations, very important museum partners, as well as steps that we have seen that have succeeded in other sectors. We believe that any one of these could have a significant impact, and all of them are reasonable and viable. First, it's important to understand the problem. The museum community, due both to its unmatched expertise as well as its unique situation, can help answer questions that no others can. There's a real need to report suspicious activity to relevant authorities when permitted by law. You museums see a lot in the trade that no one else sees. Second, consider launching an awareness campaign. As educational institutions, museums have a very powerful platform to help policymakers, the art market, and the general public better understand the threats that come from cultural racketeering and how we can work together to fight against it. We share the same goal. We want a legitimate trade. Through exhibitions, lectures, and other programming, this outreach could reach a very wide audience. Third, consider strengthening best practices. Many of the ethical guidelines, national laws, and international treaties that we rely upon to combat the illicit trade are decades old. They don't reflect the modern world, particularly the digital world. It's time to upgrade our strategies, just as the criminals have updated theirs. so that we can protect our cultural heritage and the legitimate art market. Museums are very well positioned to be on the forefront of this effort. Fourth, we all need capacity building, training of provenance research and authentication, as well as having dedicated museum staff to research acquisitions and objects history can make a significant difference. The digital world opens up so many possibilities for this research now. And as current cases demonstrate, such steps are also needed to protect institutions, not only from unethical behavior, but increasingly from criminal liability. Fifth, commit to continuing action. Today's gathering sends another strong signal that the international community is prepared to come together in continuing to develop the political will that we have seen exhibited through the G7, through the G20, through other leading heads of state organizations to safeguard our shared heritage from criminals. Together, we can do amazing things. The Antiquities Coalition and the diverse group of experts that it brings together are at your service as you continue to do this important work. Thanks to all of you for your continued leadership, for your interest in how to resolve this really pressing issue, and this opportunity to participate in today's very important event. I wish you all the best of luck and hope that many good things come out of it. Thank you.
Well, all the pleasure is ours. Deborah, and once again, thank you for what you are doing to fight against art trafficking, you and your team. And we will have the pleasure to welcome tomorrow Madame Tess Davis. It was a very rich opening ceremony. I see on the screen speakers for the first session of our forum. So once again, I would like to thank Gao Anming, the Vice President and Editor-in-Chief of China International Communications Group, for your strong support for the third year. Of course, the President of Nankai University, President Chen Lu, and we will learn more about Nankai and what Nankai is doing in the field of museum studies in a moment. I would like to thank very much the Minister of Culture of Greece, Madame Lina Mendoni, a prominent archaeologist, Madame Irina Bokova, of course, and you, dear Deborah Lair. Now, it gives me great pleasure to give the floor to the moderator of the first session of our event, a session which will discuss museums as permanent platforms for artistic and cultural exchanges. And we are honored to have with you a very famous scholar in this field, Professor Yu Xin-zhong, who is also the Dean of the very prestigious Faculty of History of Nankai University. This year, we wanted to emphasize on museum studies, maybe the academic perspective on the topic, and no better moderator than Professor Yu Xin-zhong to organize the conversation on this topic. So thank you very much. I apologize again for the technical issues. You know, it happens. We fixed the problem for the moment. Thank you for your patience. And the floor goes to Professor Yu Xin-zhong. Professor, thanks to your support. Thank you also to your team. They have created a wonderful environment for us to have today's conversation. Professor, the floor is yours, and I know that the conversation will be very rich. 非常感谢于信中教授，谢谢。
尊敬的高大伟先生，尊敬的各位参会的嘉宾和先生女士们，大家下午好！非常高兴啊，大家能够在线上和以线下结合的方式呢，来参加举办我们这样一次会议。我们刚才啊有幸啊听了5位主讲嘉宾他们所做的精彩的报告，让我们收益良多。接下来呢，我们要进入到本次会议的第一个分论坛。本分论坛呢，第一个分论坛呢，我们聚焦博物馆如何为艺术和文化交流提供永久平台。在这个分论坛中呢，我们一共有6位主讲嘉宾，每位主讲嘉宾呢，的发言的时间呢是8分钟。请因为时间的关系呢，请大家注意好这个时间。首先，我们有请的主讲嘉宾是来自于南开大学博物馆的馆长，也是南开大学历史学院的英才教授刘毅先生。下面有请刘先生。
好，各位同仁、各位嘉宾，下午好！主持人，下午好！我们这场的主题是博物馆如何为艺术和文化交流提供永久平台。我在这里谈3点想法和大家交流。第一，博物馆是人类艺术和文化交流的重要平台。博物馆是一个现代的文化设施，它是人类文明发展到一定历史时期应运而生的一种重要文化设施，从出现之时开始，就承担着人类文明展示和传播的重要使命。互联网兴起以后，博物馆不仅是公众学习知识的场所，而且成为了公众交流知识的场所。在文化知识来源多样化的今天，博物馆以其实物展示功能所具有的直观性、真实的情境感，具有其他传播方式所无法比拟的优势，具有不可代替性。那么从这个意义上讲，博物馆是人类艺术和文化交流的重要平台，我们必须坚守这个平台，也必须充分利用这个平台。第二个问题，坚持开放包容、平等交流，承认多元文明共存，杜绝文化沙文主义，承认世界文化多元性，是当今世界的潮流。文化的差异不能以先进或落后来评判。博物馆应该秉持开放包容的理念，坚持多元文化的视野，以平等的视角建设文化交流平台。我们应该通过多种形式，包括展览交流、学术沙龙、人才交流、项目合作等不同的方式方法，搭建多面向、多层级、多功能、多形式的交流平台，加强国际合作，加强馆际合作，准确、全方位、深层次的阐释藏品的内涵，特别是一些原生态文化、原住民的文化内涵。在这方面，我们特别要秉承开放包容的心态，特别要坚持平等交流的姿态。第3个问题就是以长久发展的观念建设博物馆文化交流平台。我们知道，博物馆是一个重要的文化设施，在人类文明传播中就有重要的地位。我们应该保持博物馆的长期可持续发展。那么为了做到这一点，我想有3个方面的问题应该特别注意。 第一个就是要积极动员并利用各种不同的力量和资源，包括政府机构、企业、民间组织、社会公众，要充分发挥这些不同力量的作用，从政策、资金、社会服务等方面，共同建设博物馆文化交流的平台。从博物馆角度来讲，我们应该创造一个良好的工作和研究环境，深刻发掘不同藏品的文化遗产价值，准确的把这些价值转化成展览语言，使它呈现于社会公众面前。同时，我们也希望吸引更多的博物馆以外的人士来参与藏品的这个内涵的阐释工作，特别是观众，吸引并鼓励公众积极参与或者是深度参与博物馆文化交流平台建设，这是我们当今博物馆发展的一个重要任务。观众是博物馆的消费者，也是我们博物馆的服务对象。服务好观众是我们博物馆的重要工作目的。观众可以通过参与、分享、交流等不同方式，从而成为博物馆艺术与文化参与者和贡献者。说到底，博物馆学它的研究对象，目前我们应该放在重点，应该是放在人上，而不是再放在器物上。这是一个，特别是我们中国博物馆学最近这些年来的一个重要转变。这是第二个这个意见。第三个意见呢，就是说我们应该主动的关注新技术手段在博物馆领域的应用。就目前来说，应该特别积极利用数字赋能，进行博物馆文化的交流与传播。新冠疫情给人类带来了前所未有的不幸，同时也给我们带来了前所未有的发展机遇。经过这3年，很多博物馆主动的、被动的接受了数字化这种形式，而且积累了不少经验。线上线下相结合，在博物馆工作中已经取得了比较好的基础。我们应该利用这个基础，在这个基础上积极的利用数字技术，为博物馆的各项事业服务，创新展示形式，优化共享内容。我的报告就到这儿，谢谢各位，欢迎大家批评指正。
谢谢刘教授言简意赅的这个发言。我特别注意到刘教授讲到，我们博物馆关注的不应该只是器物，而是应该更多的是关注人。只有真正的把这个关注人，才能更好的把这个器物和历史和文化呢有一个更生动的衔接和这个展现。接下来我们有请路易斯·高塔特先生。高塔特先生是希腊的来自于希腊意大利非常著名的考古学家，曾经担任3任这个意大利总统的文化顾问。下面呢，我们就有请高塔特先生。
Louis, on ne t'entend pas.
Is it okay now? Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for some technical problems and I apologize really. I would like to discuss with you a problem related to the definition of the museum. What is a museum? And what is meant by this word? I believe, as philologist and archaeologist, that it is not useless to go back in time and try to understand the spirit that was at the basis of the creation of the museum. The word museum derives from the Greek word musa, which was used to name the goddesses supposed to inspire and guide the poet who wanted to sing the exploit of heroes. The Museion, Temple of the Muses of Alexandria in Egypt, was one of the most important intellectual centers of the Hellenistic world, built in 290 BC. With it, the Legidian capital, the Museum of Alexandria, respecting the models of Plato's Academy and Aristotle's Lyceum in Athens, was a kind of research institute at the service of thought and beauty. The desire to collect and preserve the works of the past with the ambition to bring together in one place the heritage of knowledge and art is at the basis of the project of Pharaoh Ptolemy I Soter. The Museum of Alexandria, next to the famous library, gathered in an academy scholars, artists, and writers. The construction of the museum was the masterpiece of the cultural policy of Ptolemy I, who aimed to seek, through intellectual supremacy, by sublimating the contribution of Greek civilization that Alexander the Great has helped to make known to the world. In Roman times, the spoils of wars and interest in Greek art caused the accumulation of works of art and precious objects that were signs of prestige and wealth for their owners. At the time, many members of the Roman aristocracy built art galleries for paintings and exhibit sculptures in public places. Subsequently, the passion for antiquity, the quest for vestige of this prestigious past, as well as the collection of rare specimens are specific to Europe and the Renaissance. Princes, protectors of the arts and sciences, humanists and scholars, then constitute cabinets of curiosities, where works of art were accumulated, masterpieces that were presented in the palaces in a decorative way, but also with a concern for knowledge in relation to the new interest in the science and arts. Vasari, for instance, was commissioned to furnish the Uffizi Gallery to showcase the Medici collection. In France, under the First Empire, the property confiscated from the king, the clergy, the emigrants became patrimony of the nation. The social function of museum extends to education, knowledge and aesthetic contemplation are no longer reserved to a small elite. For those who can afford to buy works, but offer it to society as a whole. In the field of fine arts, the educational and historical objectives assigned to museums and their subsequent function of national and social cohesion in terms of aesthetic criteria give rise to controversy, but served as a model for Europe. I would like to open a small chapter on the agenda. The question of the return to museum in the countries of origin of works of art taken from them by violence, either in the time of colonialism or by war, or by illegal operation such as clandestine excavation or theft. 2017, in Ouagadougou, President Macron declared, within 5 years, the condition must be met for temporary or permanent restitution of African art to Africa. In addition to many countries of Africa, such as Greece, China, of course, Italy, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, victims of predator violence are demanding part of their past be returned to them. A solution to this fundamental problem can only be found that the museum is built through the concept of a shared heritage, an heritage that does not belong to a given country, but to humanity as a whole. In our 21st century, the proliferation of museums reveals a desire to know, to admire, but also to preserve an heritage. It reflects a fascination for history, a need for identification. The great museums have both an historical and normative ambition to confront masterpieces by covering the entire field of art and offering a representative overview of its evolution. But there is another fundamental aspect linked today, much more than yesterday, to the mission of the museum, the ability to open the minds and hearts of men to an universal conscience. The museum teaches us that the search for beauty, the passion for history, the concern to safeguard the testimonies of the past are values anchored in the soul of every human being. In its own way, the museum is a formidable instrument at the service of peace. Thank you very much.
感谢高塔德先生。高塔德先生从这个历史的角度回顾了一个对博物馆在欧洲的一个兴起的这个过程，还进一步从现实来对这个如何让这个博物馆成为艺术和文化的这个交流提供这个交流平台啊，做了非常好的这个阐述。感谢高塔德先生。下面我们有请第3位报告人格雷琴·迪特里希。他是位于盐湖城的犹他大学犹他美术馆的执行董事。下面我们有请格雷琴迪特里希女先生。
Hello, my name is Gretchen Dietrich, and I serve as the Marcia and John Price Executive Director of the Utah Museum of Fine Arts, also known as the UMFA. I'm delighted and honored to be speaking with you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to engage with museum professionals in China and across the globe to share some thoughts about current art museum practices at my institution and more broadly in the United States. First, some background about our wonderful museum and where we are in the world. The UMFA was formally established in 1951, and it's Utah's only institution that acquires, interprets, and exhibits a comprehensive fine art collection of more than 20,000 artworks from the ancient world to global contemporary art. We are accredited by the American Alliance of Museums and a member of the Association of Art Museum Directors. We therefore uphold industry standards in our field while always considering the people, history, and geology of our community here in Utah when acquiring art, designing programs, curating exhibitions, and engaging people in art and humanities education. The state of Utah is located in the western United States and currently has 3.2 million inhabitants. It is one of the fastest growing states in the U.S. with an estimated 160 people moving to Utah every day. Utah is renowned for its incredible outdoor and recreational resources, boasting world-class skiing, hiking, mountain biking, and known the world over for its 5 astonishingly diverse and beautiful national parks. You can land in Salt Lake City and be skiing within the hour, or you can go south and get lost in the Red Rock Canyons and beautiful landscapes of the high desert. In 2019, 1.8 million Chinese tourists visited the state of Utah, mostly, I'm told, to explore the national parks. The UMFA is situated on the campus of the University of Utah, the largest public university in the state with a current enrollment of 32,000 students. The university is located in the heart of Salt Lake City, the largest city in the state, home to more than half of the state's residents. The UMFA serves as an essential cultural resource for a growing and increasingly diversifying community across the region. The mission of the museum is to inspire critical dialogue and illuminate the role of art in our lives. Like any organization that strives to be relevant to its public, the UMFA must be responsive to the ever-changing dynamics of local and global environments. As challenges continue to emerge around us, we embrace opportunities to think more deeply about what we do and how we might better serve our community, affect positive change in the world, and help create a more just society. I wish to focus my brief remarks today on the future of art museums in the United States, an interesting and challenging thing to think about, and something museum leaders are called to do often. It isn't hard to imagine our organizations 3 to 5 years from now. It is much more challenging, and in my estimation, more important, to imagine what our organizations will look like and focus on 15 to 20 years from now. What will the work of the museum look like in the future? What will be the same or different from how we approach this work today? What will our priorities and opportunities be? And what will our audiences look like? And what will matter most to the people we strive to serve? And perhaps most importantly, what conversations should we be having today? And what work should we be doing now if these dreams are to become a reality? The essential place to begin this conversation with you today is an idea that has always been at the core of my work in museums. The simple idea that museums need to be as much about people as they are about art and objects. When I began my career in American art museums 33 years ago, this was largely not the case. The museum visitors, their needs and ideas and desires were simply not valued. They were rarely studied. They often did not enter into discussions about the programmatic work and priorities of the museum. Those decisions about what art the museum should collect and exhibit have historically been the purview of the museum's curatorial team. The idea that the museum should strive to meet the needs of its audiences, to answer their questions and present art in ways that works best for them, was very much looked down upon. The work of engaging with visitors and finding ways to help people connect to the art on display was often perceived as an afterthought and was often secondary in importance to the desire and ambitions of the curatorial team. In the last 20 years in the United States and Canada, I'm delighted to say I've seen a shift in how museum professionals now view the intersection of the work of the curatorial and museum education teams, Increasingly today, excellent museum curators are as deeply knowledgeable and mindful of the needs of the people who visit their institutions as they are knowledgeable about the art they study and research. And great art museum educators, the people who make our collections come alive for our visitors, are as deeply knowledgeable about the art collections and objects of their own institutions as they are about the communities they serve. When community-centered curators work collaboratively and respectfully with art-centered museum educators, the resulting exhibitions and installations are always so much more meaningful and impactful than they would be otherwise. Combine this essential work with a more welcoming and visitor-centered experience, and we find museums like the UMFA, well-loved, trusted, and well-visited by people living in our community, perceived to be an important and essential part of the cultural landscape of our city, state, and region. Recently, we've pushed this work even further by engaging more closely in collaboration with community members to create new installations of parts of our collection. I'm excited to describe a current project that we are very proud of. It's called, in Spanish, Transformación Cultural Nuestro Pasado es Presente, which means in English, cultural transformation, our past is present. Beginning in the spring of 2022, the UMFA has been working in partnership with a nonprofit organization in Salt Lake City, Artes de Mexico in Utah. With their essential and engaged participation, we are in conversation with members of Utah's Mexican and Mexican-American community to re-envision aspects of UMFA's permanent collection with the aim of celebrating the rich and flourishing cultures of Mexico, past and present. Currently, the UMFA holds 75 archaeological objects from Mesoamerica, the historic region which comprises art from the modern-day countries of Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Belize, and central to southern Mexico. Additionally, we hold 7 artworks dating between the 18th and 21st centuries that visualize diverse aspects of life in this region. The goal of this exciting project is to create a new installation of these collections that highlights the intersection of the past and the present, and celebrates the ways in which people living today carry ancestral knowledge that shapes our collective ideas of life, family, creativity, and culture. This project is unusual in the degree to which we, the Art Museum, have welcomed and embraced community knowledge about the art of this region. We're not saying that such community knowledge usurps art historical or archaeological knowledge. Rather, we are certain that doing this work together with members of our community who identify as Mexican and Mexican-American will create a new installation of these objects that is richer, more nuanced, and more meaning for all of us. We have regular community meetings to better understand what these objects mean to people of Mexican descent. And in March of 2025, we will create a new installation of the collection that will share this learning and these stories and present these fantastic artworks as part of the ongoing living tradition of the people of present-day Mexico and Central America. I hope you can see that this work represents a shift in our museological thinking about the ways in which an art museum can and should work in dialogue with community members to make smarter, more culturally sensitive, and impactful installations and exhibitions. This project in particular will connect the people of the past and the beautiful objects they made and cared about to the people of the present. And we're excited to build authentic, long-term community relationships with people who identify as Hispanic, and in so doing, we hope to become a more trusted and much-loved resource for this community in particular, and for all people living in this region. With this small example in mind, and the spirit in which this work is being done, it isn't hard to imagine the future of the UMFA as an increasingly loved and trusted cultural resource, a place where people can find themselves, their stories and histories, while they also come into contact with art from other parts of the world through time and space. And while art and objects are and will always be at the heart of what we are and what we do as an art museum, it's the new ways of working with people and communities with humble hearts and a willingness to challenge the old ways of doing museum work that I'm most excited about and that I believe will change the Art Museum for the better. Thank you.
非常感谢杰特里希女士非常生动、有趣，而且非常具有内涵的这样的报告。我想不仅这个里希女士不仅带我们去领略了这个盐湖城和这个她的美术馆的一些这情形，而且还更好的从关注人的角度阐述了美术博物馆或者说博物馆的一些新的理念、新的做法，让我们可以更好的来连接现实与未来。感谢杰特里希女士。那我们接下来呢，有请第4位报告人，来自于当代中国和世界研究所的研究院的院长，对外传播和当代中国与世界2本杂志的主编，于运泉老师。下面有请于教授。
到会议的议程哈，我发言的题目重点讲一讲博物馆在全球文明倡议中的平台作用。因为我们这一场讨论的主题就是聚焦博物馆如何成为艺术和文化交流的永久平台。前面各位专家发言的时候呢，已经谈到了博物馆的在当下文明交流部件中的重要作用特别是我们欧洲和美国的许多朋友包括我们这一场论坛的这个重要的发起方高大伟先生都提到了，我也很赞同他们的观点所以说博物馆是我们说是文物或者是一个世界的文化的这个宝藏或者是人类文明史的一个重要的载体。这是听下来前面的专家谈到的一个基本的一个结论。那全球文明倡议呢，许多专家或者是朋友们都很熟悉是今年3月15号习近平主席在中国共产党与世界政党高层对话会上提出来的。他提出来的文明倡议大概包括以下4个方面的内容强调尊重世界文明的多样性，弘扬全人类共同价值，要重视文明传承和创新，要加强国际人文交流合作。我的 PPT 呢没有同步。那前面博克瓦女士也谈到说，博物馆现在在中国发展是快速的。我自己虽然不从事博物馆的工作但是也看过许多博物馆。与很多博物馆的这个领导者或者是建设者、研究者是好朋友所以说我理解博物馆在这个文明传承当中可以发挥以下重要的作用。第一个就是是一个文明发展程度的一个分项标或者是提升我们文化自信的一个助推器。因为随着世界经济社会的迅速发展，博物馆已经成为创造传播新知识和人类文明的重要窗口，成为促进国际文化交流的重要平台。因为我们今天是在南开大学我觉得一个博物馆也像一所大学一样，当前博物馆的数量和质量已经成为衡量社会文明程度和经济发展水平的标志。前面波克瓦女士谈到现在中国有以前的25家博物馆，现在发展到5000多家。2021年底呢，据中国的文化和旅游部最新的统计显示中国现在有博物馆机构有5772个。2012年的时候呢，这个数目是3069个。所以说看到10年过去的10年，中国的这个博物馆呈现出快速发展的这个势头，而且 就是这有个图表哈，不知道为啥它慢一些。就是看到参观博物馆的人数哈，也在稳步的增长。而且我自己感觉哈，这些年有一个独特性的地方，因为虽然中国政府很重视哈，也出了博物馆相关的规划，但是呢，社会的哈各种各样的社会性的博物馆哈，各种专题的博物馆，我觉得发展是过去10年的一个显著的标志。我们看到很多，包括大学都有自己的博物馆，很多企业或者说很多有各个分门别类的博物馆，因为我们中国外文局是从事翻译工作是一个重要的一个行业，我们也在考虑建设一个中国翻译的博物馆哈，所以说博物馆的确现在跟文化文明的发展哈，它是一个重要的标志。第二呢，我们今天讨论的是中欧美的合作，是国际交流，所以说它还是一个文明多样性的一个展示的窗口。前面高安民先生谈到了今年4月份中国和法国的联合声明中强调两国将重启人文交流哈，为全球推动博物馆的这个交流提供便利。除了他提到的故宫和凡尔赛宫等的合作之外哈，其实我们今年4月哈，我们中国外文局当代中国世界研究院哈，我们还与法国巴黎博览会哈，我们合作举办了一场中华文化的主题交流活动哈，特别是在巴黎博览会期间哈，我们这个邀请了江西景德镇的哈中国陶瓷博物馆，还有浙江的这个和文化哈等，做了许多文化的交流互鉴的活动哈，得到了法国和巴黎各方的这个文化界人士的一致好评。第三呢，我们认为说这也是不同文明交流的一个会客厅哈。2019年在亚洲文明对话大会期间哈，有一场重要的配套活动，就是亚洲国家的精品文物展哈。当时中国国家文物局的领导哈，还向来参加这个亚洲文明对话的这个各国政要领导人和专家学者介绍了亚洲各国的这个精品文物及其蕴含的文化的内涵这也是一种文明交流对话的一个有效的一个载体所以说它也是一个展示的窗口。第四呢，前面也有许多专家谈到它也是一个数字文化转型的示范区，因为现在文明的传承数字化是一个潮流和趋势。前面许多专家学者谈到的当下的一些数字技术的应用特别是元宇宙技术的应用对我们从事的这个博物馆的行业的国际交流和这个受众体验是一个极大的提升。包括现在提到的这个敦煌的数字藏经洞项目数字藏经洞项目现在有几个比较非常具有特点的地方给大家也介绍一下。一个它就是首次在数字世界还原了莫高窟1600米的外崖的这个崖面的原貌而且是做了一个叫开灯的效果就是还原了早上10点钟的那个太阳光照射的这个效果因为大家去过莫高窟都知道它的洞内很多它是光线是不足的，通过这种技术呢，让我们在数字世界就能这个有一个全新的体验。所以说这些新技术的应用我觉得对博物馆未来的这个数字化的国际交流和展陈是一个重要的一个发展的方向。以上4个方面呢，我想说就是说我们讨论这个平台作用我们可能应该考虑的一个方向。那最后一点时间呢，我也因为当代中国世界研究院我们是这个中欧美博物馆倡议的一个重要的合作方我们也是博物馆的一个受众所以在这个交流的过程当中，我们也觉得说建立国际的对话合作网络非常重要。我们要搭建国际对话交流的平台这是我们第3次对话，我们也希望这样的对话能够持续下去。首先要构建一个博物馆各种类型的博物馆和博物馆相关从业者的一个共同体我们在共同体内交流。 同时，第二呢，我想说还要增进多群体与其他主体的这跨界的交流，我们还要连接各方，开展文明交流互鉴包括习近平主席提出来的这个全球文明倡议。第三呢，我们说要想可持续发展除了刚刚说到的这个拥抱数字化技术我们还有拥抱青年我也知道高大伟先生一直在着力说我们要调动国际青年的力量包括我们在闭幕式演讲除了像余兴中教授这样的这个资深的这个历史文化方面的学者我们还有青年的这个来参与，只有将这个这些广大这个国际青年团结起来，让他们这个了解博物馆，参与到博物馆，参与到这个文明对话和文化传承当中，我们这个中欧美博物馆合作的事业我觉得才能行稳致远，不断的这个发扬光大。再次感谢，谢谢。
非常感谢于院长，他从这个他们具体的做法来，更很好的从一些举措很好的来阐释了博物馆在全球文明倡议中的一个重要的这个所起的一个平台的这个作用。接下来呢，我们就有请第5位报告人。他是来自美国约翰霍普金斯大学的基内科教授，他是目前是霍普金斯大学博物馆学系的系主任，也是一位在这个有多学科背景的这样的非常重要的学者。下面有请基内科先生。
Hello, my name is Sarah Chacon.And I'm the director of the Museum Studies and Cultural Heritage Management graduate programs in the Krieger School of Arts and Sciences at Johns Hopkins University in the United States. When I was invited to contribute to today's session, I thought quite a bit about the theme, museums as cultural intermediaries in the dialogue between civilizations, and the role of the museum as a platform for cultural exchange. I considered what it meant to be a platform, to be a place where exchange happens, a site of intercultural dialogue.Now, museums are not simply passive reflections of the time, but they are agents in the shaping of our understanding of now. Museums have molded public discourse on history, science, and art for centuries. They have been participants in global projects of colonization, willing agents in endeavors of nation building, and the keepers of cultural patrimony. But the people who walk through their doors are individuals. As such, they are also personal, sites of identity formation, memory, and meaning-making.Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, Lonnie Bunch, has said, and I quote, "Museums have an opportunity to be at the center of their community, to help the community grapple with the challenges they face, to use history, to use science, to use education, to give the public the tools to grapple with this." Now, the 21st century has seen museums shift to extend themselves beyond repositories, to engage in understanding for today and for tomorrow. Museums are asking questions about their audiences, about the history of their collections, and about their role and purpose in society. These are important questions. These are timely questions. These are hard questions. But they open us up to the opportunities on the other side, which among others involve a more inclusive institution.Now, preparing emerging museum professionals for a world increasingly divided by politics, economics, climate, and culture, it is important to demonstrate the utility of the institution in creating cultural understanding through dialogue and exchange. This is key to fulfilling the vision of thought leaders like Lonnie Bunch that squarely place the museum at the center of community. For today, I thought a bit about what that means in the context of the broader field of museum studies or museology.We have always been a discipline that straddles the boundary between theory and practice. Intradisciplinary in our approach as we engage in academic inquiry anchored in doing. We are a student-centered field, mindful of our impact, especially in light of the historic role of the institution and its potential futures. We have seen institutions begin to reimagine their community relationships while reaching out to become more inclusive. This expansion of our understanding of purpose has potentially profound implications on the museum moving forward. Museum studies programs have an important role to play in shaping the field. We need to be humble in our approach to this responsibility while acknowledging our impact. The Johns Hopkins University's Museum Studies graduate program has over 1,000 alumni working in institutions across the US and abroad. A part-time graduate degree program designed for the online space, we offer students the opportunity to work in the field while pursuing their degree. In a single course, I may have students from India, Singapore, France, and the US, all in the same digital classroom, sharing their professional experience and learning from not only me, but also, and perhaps more importantly, each other, in creating peer networks that transcend boundaries. Our commitment to diversity and cultural exchange is echoed in our curriculum, our on-site seminar course, and the work of our faculty. Currently in our 15th year, the program has been intentional in maintaining a global perspective. One of our 5 defined program learning outcomes includes analyzing museum practices, theories, and methodologies through the lens of diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. As such, we are intentional in our inclusion of multiple voices in theory and practice, incorporating authors representative of diverse perspectives and international approaches, as well as diverse case studies that offer broad perspectives on challenges facing institutions today. One of the program's customizable core courses is a class on the history and philosophy of museums. At face value, this might seem benign, but this class takes an intentionally global perspective to the development of the institution and does not limit the exploration to Western paradigms or Western definitions. From cabinets of curiosities to historical monuments and sites of memory, the course surveys museum history from a global perspective to examine how the institution has changed over time and the moment we find ourselves in. Other courses in the program have included Museums in Global Perspective and Museums of the Americas, to name just a few. Beyond offering courses on museums in a global context, technology has enabled us to include guest lectures from museum practitioners and scholars from around the world. Our students are able to hear from their international colleagues about diversity of work being done globally. In addition to our efforts across our asynchronous curriculum, we've worked to increase student exposure to cultural exchange through our on-site seminar course, the one required on-ground course in the program. We've been able to use this on-site field course to explore how museums move beyond their walls to reimagine the relationships with their communities. It has offered us the invaluable opportunity to collaborate with our colleagues in the US and abroad, and for our students to learn from the global community of museum professionals. We've held the 10-day field course in London, Barcelona, and Berlin, and will be in Modena, Italy this coming summer. These courses are not tourist excursions, but opportunities for us to connect our students with museum practitioners in our host city and through our institutions to find commonalities, and through our host institutions to find commonalities in professional experience and new approaches to global challenges. The seminar includes practicum opportunities in a variety of museum settings, conversations with local museum professionals, and class sessions that integrate the daily experience. Using the rich diversity of museums in a designated location, the course provides students with a chance to use what they have learned in their prior courses, develop networks with fellow students and museum experts, and explore the latest in museum practice. In addition to our curriculum, we're also able to draw on faculty with a diversity of experiences, furthering the opportunities for cultural exchange. Over 70% of our courses are offered by adjuncts, who are practitioners in the field working in institutions in a variety of capacities, mostly across the US, but also abroad. The field is undergoing significant changes, and it is the responsibility of museum studies programs in preparing the next generation of emerging professionals for the challenges of the 21st century. The field is undergoing significant changes, and the responsibility of museum studies programs in preparing the next generation of emerging professionals for the challenges of the 21st century is heavy. Community is central to the work being done, and museum studies programs are tasked with developing a community of museum practitioners that prioritize cross-cultural exchange and collaborative approaches to the challenges of the 21st century. Projects of decolonization, inclusion, social justice, and community engagement require professionals that are knowledgeable, empathetic, and collaborative, who are able to work across borders and across cultures to fulfill the promise these institutions hold. The future is in the hands of our students, and we take that responsibility very seriously. Thank you for your time today. I hope convenings like the one today continue to expand our conversations in the field.
非常感谢基内科老师这一个报告啊，能够很好的向我们介绍了这个在霍普金斯大学执行的这个博物馆的研究生项目，这个对于我们的未来的这个人才培养，开放式的人才培养非常有借鉴的意义。感谢基内科老师。下面我们最后就有请这是本论坛最后一位报告人潘雅德先生，他是维尔潘画廊联合创始人兼 CEO。下面有请。
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today for this wonderful forum. Thank you, David, and thank you to all the participants for this wonderful opportunity. I'm a gallerist today, living in Hong Kong for the past 13 years. I've been living in this part of the world, and I've been able, as a witness, to see the development, the wonderful development of the ecosystem, art and cultural ecosystem in this part of the world. I've been fascinated to see how a city like Hong Kong can turn into, from a financial city, a city turn around the market, to slowly a city that would promote more and more art and eventually develop an ecosystem made today of three major international museums. Of course, the last museum that has been developed into Hong Kong, I'm thinking of the Hong Kong Museum of Art, but also the Palace Museum, and of course the M+, which is the second biggest contemporary museum in the world. All these different museums have appeared in the last 3-4 years, so it's a very recent development, but it shows how I think art and culture is also towards the role that Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area wants to play as an interface between China and the rest of the world. And of course, the role of museum in our ability to understand each other, to create more dialogue. And it is for me personally, because I've had the chance to be raised with artists. My mom is an artist, my sister is an artist, and I've had the chance to live with very famous artists like Zhao Qi, Pierre Soulages, or Anselm Kiefer, to know that the important element in today's world is to be able to look at the world from another point of view, from the artist's point of view, from a point of view that comes from a different culture. Museum gives us the opportunity for more tolerance and more dialogue, and we need museum to play their role into creating these dialogues between the different culture. I think in a moment where we are beset by more fear, more conflict, more crisis around the world, of course, the different wars, and the war in Ukraine and the different tension internationally really adds on to a climate that needs more and more culture and needs, of course, the museum to play the role by not just bringing, I would say, a beautiful or commercial exhibition, but also creating conversations. And that is an element that I know will happen more and more in this part of the world. I've been into China in the last recent weeks. I've been able to visit more than 25 museums from the south of China, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Chengdu, Shanghai, Beijing, and Qingdao. And I've seen the development of this ecosystem in China, the amount of people that more and more visit those museums is not just, I think, a structural development, but the people are really responding to this development. And they are willing also to pay for more culture. The ticketing is growing in China, and I think that's an important sign of how willing they are to learn and to interact with museum. Now, I think there is a turning point here. In the US, you have about 35,000 museums. In Europe, you have about 30,000 museums. And if I'm not mistaken, in China, I think that right now the scene is about 5,000 to 6,000 museums. So the potential for growth for that ecosystem is major, is gigantic. And of course, I think we will see and be the witness of that development in the next coming years. I think one important element of that growth is not just a public development of the ecosystem, but it's also a private development of the ecosystem. What we have been able to witness in China, and that is really fantastic, is the development of private initiative, private foundations, amazing private museums. And I think that this element of transmission for a certain elite in China is now key because we are asking more and more for the elite, for the people who have succeeded in life to be able to transmit to their city, transmit to their country, and transmit to their kid and family more than just wealth and money, but also values, principles, and a certain way of looking at the world and life. So I think this private development is going to be major. I'm quite sure that there will be at some point some incentives towards the government or I would say the administrative function. I know that these developments in US, in Europe, in Japan, of the ecosystem of private museums have been developed thanks to tax systems that created great incentives for the development of private foundations and optimization towards the tax for certain individuals. And I think that once this mechanism will be put in place at some point in time, there will be a huge turning point and a huge change for the whole ecosystem. And I encourage, of course, this mechanism to be put in place so can we benefit from a very diverse ecosystem when it comes to museum and the offer of culture. And I will finish with this idea. Transmission is at the key, I think, is the key of today's world, and I think we're going to live one of the biggest transmission of wealth in China and in Asia from a generation that had the ability to create that wealth very quickly. And I believe that this now needs to come with also responsibility of transmitting more than wealth, but also culture. I believe that we need to help create and help participate into that ecosystem because we need more conversation and we need more structures that help these foundations to be created. So it is my role as a gallerist, but also as an entity that, as a foundation, and trying to help bringing exhibition from the West in the East, and tomorrow I believe from the East to the West to participate in that environment. And I really hope that thanks to culture and thanks to the museums and creation of the new museums of tomorrow, we'll be able to create a better world and understand each other much better. Thank you.
非常感谢潘维德先生。刚才潘先生结合自己的经历， 把博物馆放在具体的城市里面来阐释它的特色和它的这个影响，特别是在最后谈到了文化传承中的这一个意义。非常感谢这个潘维德先生。刚才啊，我们有6位来自中国、美国、欧洲的重要的这个学者，从这个不同的方面呢，来探讨了这个博物馆如何为艺术和文化交流啊提供永久平台中的一个做法。实际上也是更好的从这个角度来阐发了博物馆学的理论、实践和方法，阐释了我们如何利用现代的科技，利用新的理念，让博物馆更好的起到传承文化、构建过去、现实和未来的桥梁这样的一个作用。这样一个分来自不同地域，来从不同的角度展开的这样的这个非常丰富、内容丰富的这个报告呢，我想一定可以为我们博物馆学的发展啊提供非常好的这个借鉴和提供非常多的助力。所以呢，再一次感谢6位报告人的精彩报告。那我们本场的这个报告呢，就到此结束。感谢各位先生，感谢各位参与者，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Professor. Indeed, this is the end of the first day, but the conversation goes on tomorrow. 2 very interesting topics, stimulating topics. One on technology, and the other on the link between the protection of cultural heritage and how it can help to raise the awareness of belonging to one civilization. So this is going to be a very stimulating conversation. I would like to thank all of those who supported our first day. Of course, many thanks to Nankai University. Also, many thanks to the Academy of Contemporary of China and World Studies, and many thanks to you, Professor Yu-Xin Zhong, for chairing the first session. Let us therefore meet again tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Beijing time, 9:30 a.m. Paris time. Thank you very much. 谢谢大家，明天见。See you tomorrow.